The valley of Loreth lay cupped between three low blue hills, like a secret held in the palm of the world. Most maps forgot it. Travelers passed along the old King's Road to the south, or took the river north toward the stone cities, and never knew that, a little way off, a cluster of houses smoked quietly, and fields stitched the earth with long, patient furrows. The seasons turned gently there. Even war, when it swept across other lands like fire through dry grass, seemed to skirt the valley's rim and rush on, muttering to itself. In that quiet, between the murmuring river and the wind-soft hills, lived a young woman named Elen. Elen was the kind of person who remembered things. She remembered the way the river smelled different in spring and in autumn. She remembered faces from the caravans that came twice each year, bringing dyes and spices and gossip. She remembered stories, too, in a way that made the elders smile and shake their heads when she corrected them under her breath. She lived with her uncle in a house that sagged a little at the roofline but had a good, honest hearth and a small garden that stubbornly grew what it pleased. Her uncle kept sheep and occasionally, when pressed, a conversation. Elen kept the village's little hall of records. Hall was a grand word for it. It was a long, low building near the well, with whitewashed walls and a tiled roof. Inside were shelves, and on the shelves, ledgers, old letters, a few rolled maps with edges nibbled by mice, and several thin volumes bound in leather that smelled of age and smoke. She dusted them, read them, and copied the ones most in danger of falling apart. When the elders argued over which year the flood had taken the north field, they came to Elen. When someone wanted to know how old a house was, or who had tilled which patch of earth before them, they came to Elen. When children wanted stories, they came too, though sometimes they pretended they had come for errands. She did this work contentedly enough. It was not grand, but it was hers. Sometimes, at dusk, she stood on the hill above the village and watched the sky. On clear nights, when the wind had swept away the day's thin clouds and the smoke from the chimneys, she could see the stars more clearly than most people ever did. They seemed closer in Loreth, as if some invisible hand had tilted the bowl of the sky a little toward the valley. There was one star that interested her more than the others. It sat low in the west, above the dark line of the distant mountains, and its light was not steady. It pulsed, faintly, like a heartbeat. She had asked the elders about it, but they only shrugged. "It's always been there," they said, or "Stars are for the elves to worry about, not us." So Elen worried about it, quietly, on her own. On the night the story began, the star did not appear. The sky darkened. The other stars came out, one by one, like shy, bright thoughts. The moon, a thin, curved blade, climbed above the hills. Elen wrapped her shawl a little closer, the cool of evening settling on her cheeks and fingers, and looked for the familiar pulse in the west. There was nothing. Just a blank patch of sky, darker than it ought to have been. She frowned, waiting, as if the heavens might simply be late. The night thickened. The air felt different, as if someone had stepped into the room and not yet spoken. Below, the village lamps blinked out one by one as people went to their beds. The river talked to itself, low and steady. Still, the star did not come. She turned at last to go back down the hill. There was a figure standing behind her. Elen started, breath catching in her throat. The stranger stood a few paces away, where the path curved between two gorse bushes. He had not been there a moment ago. She was sure of it. The gorse would have rustled, the stones would have crunched. He did not look like anyone from the valley. His cloak was gray, the color of old storms, and fell in skirts to his boots. Beneath it she glimpsed a long tunic, simple but finely woven. His hair was white, not the thin, drifted white of age, but thick, like clouds over snow. His beard, neatly trimmed, matched it. His eyes, when he inclined his head to her, were the color of an old river stone, not striking, but steady. "Good evening, Elen of Loreth," he said. His voice was not especially loud, yet it carried, threading through the night as easily as smoke. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "You startled me," she said, trying to sound more annoyed than afraid. "Who are you?" He smiled, and the lines at the corners of his eyes deepened. "A poor thing," he said lightly, "a traveler, and sometimes a collector of stories." "We don't get many travelers at this hour," she said. "The road is dark." "You have no torches," he agreed, "no walls, no guards, and yet you sleep." He glanced up at the sky. "Or you did." She followed his gaze. That blank patch in the west seemed somehow larger now, as if it had eaten not only the star but the memory of its light. "You saw it," she said softly, "the star that's missing." "I felt it," he replied. "Have you ever had a candle go out in a room you weren't in, and still known it had happened?" She hesitated. "Sometimes, when the hearth dies, the house feels colder, even before you step inside." "Just so." He took a step closer. "My name is Maerold. Some call me wizard, some call me wanderer, some call me things less polite, because I have a habit of asking questions." "Wizard," she repeated, a little skepticism slipping through. Wizards belonged in tales, in the books on her shelves, in children's games where sticks became staffs. They did not usually stand on hills in her valley, commenting on her lack of torches. He seemed to read the thought on her face. "Not what you expected?" he asked mildly. "I expected a taller hat," she admitted, then flushed. He laughed, a soft, pleased sound that startled a bird from the gorse nearby. "I dislike hats," he confided. "They blow away at inconvenient moments." The tension in her chest eased a fraction. "What do you want?" she asked. "It's late." "If you need lodging, my uncle has a spare bed, though you'll have to share with the smell of sheep." "What I need," Maerold said, "is help. You've been watching that star for years. You noticed its absence at once. Most would take days, weeks, some never would." His gaze settled on her, not hot, not heavy, but intent. "There are those who will not talk to me, because I am old and carry too much knowledge on my shoulders. They will talk, perhaps, to you." "Who?" she asked. "The ones who tend what remains of that star's light," he said calmly. "In the north, beyond the grey wood, under the mountain of Aedrun, there is an ember, a shard. Call it what you like, the Starforge. It was made long ago, when the first fires were stolen from the sky. It must not be allowed to die." He spread his hands. "I cannot walk all the paths I once did. The world is wider than my bones remember. But you," he tipped his head a little, "you are not yet worn, and you are very good at remembering." She blinked. The words washed over her like cold river water. "You want me," she said slowly, "to leave the valley. To go north, to find a forge, under a mountain, and speak to, who? Dwarves? Elves? I've only ever seen elves once, and that was at midsummer, and they hardly said anything to anyone." "You learn to hear them when they don't speak," Maerold said. "And yes, dwarves, elves, humans, things older than any of those. The threads between our peoples are frayed. The star was one of the knots that held them. If it fades, the fraying will become tearing. Wars you have only heard of in your books will be a child's game by comparison." Her stomach clenched. "Surely there are others," she said, "wiser, more traveled. We have a hedge wizard in the next village who can light lamps without a tinder box. Or one of your order. I'm a record keeper. I sweep floors and copy letters. I make sure nobody forgets who planted which apple tree. That's hardly heroic, he suggested. She bit her tongue. Heroes, Maerold said, are often very poor at remembering. They charge ahead, they blaze, they break things. Sometimes that is necessary, sometimes it is ruinous. The Starforge does not need a sword just now. It needs a careful eye and a steady hand. It needs someone who will listen to what has been forgotten and notice what is about to be lost. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Elen. The star did not simply go out. It was dimming, day by day, and almost no one saw. You did. That is why I am here. The wind lifted the edge of her shawl, touching the back of her neck with cold fingers. Below, a dog barked twice, then quieted, as if remembering its place. If I go, she said, what happens to the valley? To my uncle? To the records? The valley has weathered much without you, Maerold said gently. It will weather your absence. Your uncle will grumble, and then he will get on with things, as uncles do. As for the records, if you succeed, there will be new ones to keep. And if I fail? She asked. He was quiet for a moment. Then someone else will have to try, he said. And they will have a harder road, because the star will be dimmer, and the peoples of the north more afraid. Failure is not the end of stories, but it changes their tone. She felt the pull of the valley in her bones, the comfort of known paths, the sweet weight of ordinary days, the hall of records, with its familiar dust. Her uncle's flat, dry observations over stew, the children clamoring for just one more story before bed. She also felt the blank patch in the sky, like an unanswered question. I can't just leave, she said. I'm not a warrior. I've never traveled more than a day from here. I don't know how to fight an orc, or negotiate with dwarves, or argue with wizards. You're arguing with one now, Maerold pointed out mildly. As for orcs, you call them something else here, I think. Hargul, the grave folk in the tales you tell to make children come inside by dark. They are more complicated than the stories say. But yes, there is danger. There is always danger. It is simply differently named in different places. She wrapped her arms around herself as if warding off more than the night. No, she said, the word tasting stubborn and small in her mouth. I can't. I wouldn't know what to do. Find someone else. Maerold studied her for a long time, his gaze not unkind. Very well, he said at last. Sleep, think. He turned as if to go, then paused. If you change your mind, he added over his shoulder, I will be at the old standing stone by the river at dawn. If you do not come, I will find another road, and the world will follow whatever line you draw by staying or leaving. He walked down the slope then, his gray cloak blending with the dark. In a few steps he was gone, as if the night had decided to take him in and keep him. Elen stood on the hill until her fingers ached with cold. The missing star's absence seemed louder now, like a silence inside a song. Eventually she went home. Sleep was unkind. It came in fits. In some moments she dreamed of walking through the village, only to find all the houses gone, replaced by strange towers. In others, she stood at the hilltop and watched the whole valley float away like a boat, leaving her on dry ground. Once, she dreamed of dust covering her records. The ink faded, the names gone. She woke before dawn, heart pounding, sweat cooling on her neck. Her uncle snored softly in the next room. The house smelled of banked coals and last night's stew. She sat up, her decision like a stone in her chest. I can't go, she whispered to the dim rafters. It's foolish. I'm not made for it." The silence offered no argument. She lay there a little longer, listening to her own breathing. The urge to stay was heavy, like a blanket that had grown damp. She got up. Her movements felt both distant and terribly immediate, as if she were watching someone else packing the small bag, the way she had seen travelers do. Bread, cheese, a knife from the kitchen with a good edge, a change of clothes, the leather-bound notebook she used for copying, her best ink and quills wrapped carefully in oiled cloth. At the last moment she turned back to the shelf and took one of the older documents, a map of the northern lands, more conjecture than certainty, but still a beginning. She left a note on the table, weighed down with a smooth river stone. "Gone north," it read, "to look after a star that's gone missing. I will do my best to come back. Please water the rosemary. E." At the door, hand on the latch, she hesitated. The house felt suddenly full of all the days she would not be living here. Her throat tightened. "This is a mistake," she told herself. "You are not a hero. You are a girl from a valley who knows how to mend spines and boil ink. Turn around. Go back to bed. Maerold will find someone else." Her hand turned the latch anyway. The chill air bit her cheeks. The sky was paling toward morning, but the missing star's gap still pressed at the west. She walked down the lane, past the Hall of Records, past the well. The village slept. At the edge of the fields, she almost turned back. There was still time. She could creep into bed and pretend she had merely been restless. Instead, she stepped into the faint path that led through the meadow to the river. Mist lay thick there, pooled above the water like breath that had nowhere else to go. The old standing stone rose from the bank, its surface worn smooth by rain and the passage of unnumbered days. Birds chattered in the osiers, impatient for the sun. Maerold sat on a rock nearby, cloak pulled tight against the chill. A small fire burned at his feet, its smoke going straight up. Beside him stood a pony, compact and sturdy, with the look of something that knew how to keep its footing. He looked up as she approached. His expression did not change, but his eyes brightened, as if someone had stirred the embers behind them. "Ah," he said, "you decided to be foolish." "Yes," she said shortly, "I have a talent for it, apparently." "Good," he replied. "The world is often saved by foolishness." She stopped beside the fire, clutching her packstrap. "I'm not promising anything," she said. "I don't know if I can do what you want. I might decide halfway that this was all a misunderstanding and come home." "You might," he agreed. "And if you do, that will be the story. If you do not, there will be another." He nodded at the pony. "This is Bracken. He will not thank you for singing, but he will forgive a lack of it. He bites only when insulted." Bracken snorted as if to underline the point. Maerold rose, shaking out his cloak. "Eat," he said, handing her a hunk of bread and a piece of dried apple. "We will need to cross the Greywood before the first frost if we are to make the mountains in time. The dwarves can be very literal about such things." "Dwarves," she repeated faintly, accepting the food. "You're sure this isn't some elaborate jest? You say dwarves and wizards and Starforge, as if it's all perfectly ordinary." "It is," he said, "in the parts of the world that have not fallen asleep." He doused the fire with a careful hand, stirred the ashes, and stamped them until they were dark. As the first edge of the sun cleared the hilltops, painting the mist with a thin wash of gold, Elen swung herself up onto Bracken's back. He shifted, testing her weight, then settled. She did not look back. The road out of the valley was a line of familiarity that faded at its edges like an old drawing. She had walked the first mile many times, to fetch herbs, to deliver letters. She knew each bend, each stone. After that, the land moved into her experience like a page she had not yet copied. shapes there, but no ink to fix them. They passed the last of the farmsteads by mid-morning. The people they saw there waved in a vague, accustomed way. Travelers sometimes came and went, traders, tax collectors, the occasional peddler with colorful ribbons. No one thought to ask why Elen rode beside an old man in a gray cloak. She was a speck, moving across a field of other concerns. By noon, the valley lay behind them, the hills rising between. The world opened a little, the sky bigger, the wind freer. Elen pulled her cloak tighter and tried not to think too hard about the fact that every step Bracken took was one she would have to repeat in reverse if she came home. Maerold did not talk much, which she was grateful for. When he did speak, it was to point out small things. "Those stones," he said once, gesturing with his staff at a line of mossy shapes half buried in the earth. "Once they were a road. Before your king's road. Before the king before him and the one before that. Sometimes the oldest paths do not go where the new ones think they should." "Do you always talk like that?" she asked. "Only when someone is listening," he said. They camped that night under a stand of firs, the needles soft under their bedrolls. The sky above was a scatter of bright points, but Elen kept looking west, toward the place where the missing star should have been. The more she looked, the more it seemed like a bruise in the night. "We won't see it from here," Maerold said quietly, following her gaze. "So it's gone," she said, throat tight. "Gone from sight," he said. "Not gone from the world. Light doesn't die easily. It changes, it hides, it calls." "And the forge?" she asked. "It is where it has always been," he said. "But it sleeps, like your castle in those old stories. Like you, every night, trusting you will wake up into the same skin. The difference is that the forge is not meant to sleep. It needs tending. The dwarves used to do it. They withdrew." "Why?" she asked. He shrugged one shoulder. "Pride, fear, sorrow, the usual reasons people stop doing what they promised to do." She looked into the fire, watching the flames lick at the small branches. The thought of a fire under a mountain, cooling, waiting for someone to stir its coals, made something in her chest ache in sympathy. "Will they listen to me?" she asked. "Dwarves, elves, these others." "They will listen," he said. "Whether they hear is another matter." The greywood rose on the third day, a dark smudge on the horizon that grew and grew until it became a wall of trunks and leaves and shadow. Its trees were taller than any Elen had seen, their branches thick and tangled. The air under them was different, cooler, stiller, with a weight that pressed on the bones. "This place has a bad name," she said quietly as they approached. "The stories say it eats people." "It eats those who come to take," Maerold said. "And perhaps a few who wander in by accident. But it also shelters, hides, remembers." "Do the orc folk live here?" she asked, unable to keep the nervous curiosity from her voice. "The hargul?" "Some," he said. "They move, like storms. The ones here prefer the deeper shade. We will stay near the edges where we can." They entered the forest in single file, Bracken following Maerold's sure steps, light filtered down in thin, greenish beams. The smell of damp earth and old leaves wrapped around them. The sounds of the outer world, wind, distant birds, fell away, replaced by creaks and small, furtive rustles. After a time, Elen realized that the path they walked did not quite match the one under their feet. It would seem to curve, and yet they would go straight, or vice versa. Her sense of direction, so solid in the valley, began to unravel. "Don't try to hold the map in your head," Maerold said without looking back. "The greywood doesn't care for straight lines. Think instead of rhythm, of breathing. In, out, step, step. The important thing is not where you are, but how you move through it. That's not comforting, she said. Comfort is overrated, he replied. We are not here to be comfortable. We are here to arrive. Still, she focused on her breathing, on the feel of Bracken's body under her, on the quiet swing of Maerold's staff. They walked for hours. Once, Elen thought she saw eyes glinting between the roots of a fallen tree. Low, reflecting. She tensed, but whatever it was, stayed where it was, simply watching as they passed. Another time, she heard a low murmur, almost like speech, but when she strained to pick out words, there was only the drip of water from leaf to leaf. Near dusk they came to a clearing. It was small, a pocket of open space where one great tree had fallen, taking several others with it. Ferns had moved in, filling the gap with their soft feathered green. Maerold stopped, lifting a hand. We will rest here. As Elen slid down from Bracken's back, something moved at the far edge of the clearing. Figures detached themselves from the shadow, stepping into view with the unhurried wariness of those who know very well they are not prey. They were shorter than humans, but broader in the shoulders, their arms thick with muscle. Their skin was a grayish-green, like stone under moss. Their faces were blunt, with strong jaws and eyes that seemed too small at first, until you noticed how sharply they took in everything. Each carried a weapon, an axe, a spear, a curved blade. Their clothes were patched, practical. One had a necklace of carved bone. Hargul, Elen breathed. Maerold inclined his head, as if greeting old acquaintances. The one with the bone necklace stepped forward. She, as Elen realized, seeing her more clearly, wore her hair in tight braids. Scars crisscrossed her forearms like old lightning. She looked at Maerold, then at Elen, then at Bracken. "Wizard," she said. Her voice was low but not unfriendly. "Hagra," Maerold replied. "You've grown more scars." "You've grown more lines," she said, "and fewer hairs." He smiled. "We trade what we have." Her gaze shifted back to Elen. "You bring a child." "I bring a librarian," he said. "She is more dangerous." Hagra considered this, then shrugged. "We smelled the star dying," she said without preamble. "The birds flew wrong. The trees whispered. We thought it was your people's business." "It is everyone's business," Maerold said. "If the sky unravels, there will be nowhere to hide, not even under the roots of your favorite oak." Hagra snorted. "Roots are boring," she said. "We prefer caves." Her eyes rested on Elen again. "You are from the Southfields." Elen blinked. "Yes, Lareth." "You smell of grain and ink," Hagra said, "and fear, but not the stupid kind." She tilted her head. "Why do you walk with him?" "Because the star has gone out," Elen said, the words surprising her by how easily they came. "And it shouldn't have. And because I can't stop thinking about it." Hagra's mouth curved, just slightly. "Thoughts can be heavy," she said. "We prefer smaller ones, like, is there water? Is there meat? Is that thing about to kill me?" "Those seem like good thoughts, too," Elen said. "They are," Hagra agreed. "Sometimes you need both kinds." She nodded once. "We will walk with you to the edge of our shade. There are things moving deeper in that do not care about stars or maps or stories. They only care about teeth." "Thank you," Maerold said. Hagra gestured to her companions. "Keep your wizard," she told Elen. "He wanders. The woods like him. That is suspicious." They shared the clearing that night. The hargul made a small, carefully contained fire, its smoke barely a suggestion. They cooked something that smelled of root and fat and unfamiliar spices. Elen shared her bread and cheese. When she listened, she could hear their low voices, trading stories of hunts, and caves, and a river that had changed course and confused everyone for a season. "They're not what I was told," she said quietly to Maerold under her breath. "In the tales, they're monstrous." "Monstrous is a word peoples use when they want to excuse what they do to each other," Maerold replied. "The hargul are like anyone. They love their own. They distrust strangers, they make mistakes, they tell jokes that rarely translate well." Hagra raised her second brow ridge. "We heard that," she said dryly. "It was meant to be heard," Maerold said. She grunted. "Good. Tomorrow there will be trouble. It is better if you expect it." "Thank you for the cheerful news," Elen said, before she could stop herself. Hagra's grin, when it came, showed sharp teeth, but it was not directed at her throat. "You have a tongue," she observed. "That will be useful." The trouble came the next afternoon. They were deep enough in the greywood by then that the light felt like an old rumor. The path narrowed. The air grew heavy, as if it resented being breathed. Elen felt watched, though when she turned her head, she saw nothing but trees. She heard them before she saw them, a low collective hiss, like steam escaping from the cracks in the world. Then, between the trees, shapes, hunched, pale things, with long arms and too many joints. Their eyes were yellow and flat, their mouths gaped, showing narrow, needle-like teeth. "Cave wights," Hagra said softly, her hand going to her axe. Elen's heart hammered. "What do they want?" she whispered. "Meat," Hagra said. "You, me, him, that pony, that tree. They are not connoisseurs." Maerold lifted his staff. A faint light gathered at its tip, pale, like the lost star. The wights hissed, shrinking back from the glow, then pressing forward again, drawn by the heat of living bodies. Elen reached for the knife in her belt, fingers clumsy. She knew, rationally, that flailing about with a kitchen blade in the presence of creatures like this was unlikely to improve matters. But doing nothing felt worse. "Stay behind us," Hagra said sharply. "If they get around, run. They are not clever, just hungry." "That's not reassuring," Elen muttered. "It's not meant to be," Hagra replied. What followed was not a graceful dance of blades, nor a heroic charge. It was messy and fast and oddly quiet, save for the hiss of the wights and the low grunts of exertion. Maerold's staff flared, the light spilling out in a wide circle. Wherever it touched the wights' skin, they flinched, shrieking soundlessly, their forms flickering, as if they were not entirely committed to being solid. Hagra moved like a heavy, efficient storm, her axe rising and falling, her feet sure on the uneven ground. Her companions formed a rough line, keeping the creatures from circling. Elen tried to stay behind, as instructed, but at one point she saw a shadow slip between two trunks, angling toward Bracken, who danced nervously, eyes rolling. Without thinking, she stepped in its way. The wight reared back, surprised, its head cocking. Up close, she could see that its skin was not truly pale but almost translucent, as if it were made of half-forgotten fog. It reached for her. She moved, more on instinct than skill, bringing the knife up not to stab, but to interpose. The creature's hand met metal. It recoiled, a faint black smudge marking the point of contact, as if she had dipped her blade in the absence of light. "Names," Maerold called out suddenly, his voice carrying. "They don't like names, or being seen." "Seen?" Elen shouted back, ducking as the wight swiped again. "They thrive in disregard," he said. Call it what you see." She stared at the thing in front of her, at its cooling eyes, at the hunched, starving posture. It was terrifying, yes, but there was something else, a kind of emptiness, a lack. "You are hunger," she said, the words rising almost of their own accord. "You are every fear let loose in the dark. You are the thing people pretend isn't there." The wight's form shuddered, as if she'd struck it with more than a knife. "You are not more than that," she went on, voice shaking but gaining strength. "You are not the sky, you are not the forge, you are not me." The wight let out a sound like steam escaping suddenly from a sealed pot, its edges blurred. For a heartbeat, she saw something else behind its shape, a tattered, smoky coil, twisting. Then it was gone. The others, sensing something, pulled back. Hagra's axe took one more in the side as it turned. Maerold's staff flared brighter, pushing the creatures back into the deeper dark between the trees. Silence fell, heavy and abrupt. Elen braced her hands on her knees, breathing hard. Her knife shook. Hagra walked over, breathing only a little faster than usual, axe dark in her hand. "You name well," she said. "I babbled," Elen replied. "Babbling is just naming with more words," Hagra said. "You gave the fear a shape. Then it could be pushed away." Maerold came, his face drawn from the effort, but his eyes alive with something like satisfaction. "You listened," he said, "to the thing behind the thing." "I didn't think," Elen said. "Thinking would have ruined it," he said. "Very well. The Greywood has tested you. You are still here. That is as good a sign as we ever get." They camped that night with 2 fires instead of 1. Hagra and her people sang, low and rough, songs that spoke of caves and rivers and the strange kindness of stones that did not move. Elen lay awake for a long time, staring up at the sliver of night she could see between the branches. The next morning the hargul left them at the edge of the deeper shade. Hagra clasped Elen's forearm in farewell. "If you live," she said, "come back and tell us how." "I'll try," Elen said. "If you die," Hagra added, "haunt someone interesting." "I'll add it to the list of things to consider," Elen replied. "Good," Hagra said, and turned away, her braids swinging. Beyond the Greywood, the land opened again. They climbed into hills that grew more serious with each day, their slopes steeper, their faces barer. The air thinned. The wind had teeth here, even under a pale sun. Snow clung in traces to the higher ridges, even in this mild season. Elen's legs ached. Her hands chafed on Bracken's reins. She had blisters in peculiar specific places. Yet there was a kind of clarity in the discomfort, a stripping away of unnecessary thoughts. At night, Maerold told her stories of the Starforge. "It was made," he said, poking at the coals, "when the dwarves first learned to listen to the earth. They heard something humming far beneath the stone, not like molten rock, not like the groaning of plates. Something finer, a note just out of human hearing. But there, they dug down and found a shard of sky that had fallen long before any of us were naming things. They did not know what to do with it at first. They tried to shape it as they would any metal. It melted but did not hold. They tried to grind it. It slipped between the stones. Finally, they realized they could not force it into anything. They built around it instead. A chamber, a cradle, a way to feed it. That was the forge. They tended it, sang to it, brought it metals and gems in tribute. The shard burned, and its light threaded itself back into the sky, becoming one of the stars your valley loves so much. But tending is work. In time, they grew proud, or tired. They told themselves they could let it rest, and it would stay as it was, or that someone else would take up the chant. No one did. The world grew louder. You know the rest. Not yet, Elen said. That's why we're going. Indeed, Maerold said. They met elves in a high, narrow pass where the wind sang in 3 keys at once. At first Elen thought they were part of the rocks, thin shapes, cloaked in gray-green, standing motionless against the cliff face. Then one moved, and she realized she was being watched by at least 6 pairs of eyes. Maerold stopped, staff grounded. "Friends," he said. An elf stepped forward, tall even in the cloak, their features sharp and fine, as if carved with a patient knife. Their hair was the color of ash, braided back. Their eyes were not the luminous, otherworldly glow the tales loved to describe, but a cool, steady gray with a depth that made Elen feel as if she were standing on the edge of a deep pool. "Wizard," they said. Their voice was low, every word precise. "You walk late." "Time is not what it was," Maerold replied, "nor is the sky. This is Elen of Lureth. She watches the stars more carefully than most of us. The west is dimmer," the elf said. "We have sung to it. It does not answer as it once did." "That is why we go to the forge," Maerold said. "Your people knew the ways under the mountain once." The elf's gaze slid to Elen. "And you bring a human," they said. "A young one." "I bring a memory keeper," Maerold said. "And someone who names fear by its right shape." The elf regarded Elen in silence for a long moment. It was not a hostile look, but it was not warm either. It was analytic, measuring. "What do you hope to do at the forge, human?" they asked at last. Elen took a breath. The air was thin and cold. It made her lungs ache pleasantly. "Listen," she said, "and then see what it asks. I don't think I can make it do anything, but perhaps I can remind it why it was burning in the first place." That sounded foolish, even to her own ears. The elf's expression did not change. "Fire does not need reminding," they said. "It burns or it does not." "People forget why they started tending it," she said. "Maybe fire doesn't need reminding. Maybe we do." Something almost like amusement flickered at the corner of the elf's mouth. "Spoken like someone who lives with books," they said. "I do," she replied. "Very well, book child," the elf said. "We will show you the way to the mountain's door. What lies beyond it is your concern." "We are grateful," Maerold said. They walked together along the narrow path that skirted the drop. The elves moved with a stillness that made Elen think of water, calm on the surface, currents deep below. They said little, but their presence was oddly reassuring, like well-placed stones in a fast stream. As they rounded a bend, the mountain came into full view. Aedrun rose from the surrounding peaks like the backbone of the world, its slopes steep and cast in permanent shadow. Even at noon, clouds clung to its summit. Its sides were scored with old scars where rock had fallen in long, distant avalanches. At its base, partly hidden by fallen boulders and the slow creep of moss, yawned a dark archway. "The dwarves sealed it," the elf said. Later, something else unsealed it, not with hands, with forgetting. "We do not go inside." "Why?" Elen asked. "There are places," the elf said quietly, "where memory pools too deep. We prefer to live near the flow, not the well. But you," they added with a ghost of a smile, "like wells." "That remains to be seen," Elen murmured. They parted ways there. The elves raised their hands in a gesture that could have been blessing or simple acknowledgement. "May your eyes adjust quickly," the ash-haired elf said. "And may you come out again." Inside the mountain the air changed. Sound was different. Elen could hear the small, intimate noises of their passage, the grit under their boots, the faint jingle of Maerold's belt. Bracken's huff of complaint as the light dimmed. The tunnel sloped gently downward, the daylight behind them shrinking to a coin, then a pin, then nothing. Maerold lit a small, floating globe of light with a touch of his staff. It hovered ahead of them, casting a pale, steady glow on the rock. The walls here were worked stone, carved with patterns, loops and angles that suggested both art and purpose. Elen ran her fingertips over them as she passed. "Dwarvish?" she asked. "Yes," Maerold said. "Songs with edges. They like to write their music where the earth can hear it." "What do they say?" she asked. "Names," he replied, "of the mountain, of the forge, of the lineages that first claimed them." He paused, palm flat against one long line of runes. "And here—" He closed his eyes for a moment. "Regret." "Regret?" "There are many ways to apologize," he said. "This is one." The tunnel opened, slowly, into a broad cavern. Elen stopped just inside, breath catching. It was vast. She could not see the far walls, only feel them in the way the sound of their footsteps came back, softened and delayed. The roof arched high above, lost in darkness. The floor was not flat. It dipped and rose in gentle frozen waves, as if some great hand had once kneaded the stone. At the center of the space, sunk into a shallow basin lined with metal, lay the forge. It was not what she had imagined. She had thought perhaps of a hearth or a furnace, contained, domed, roaring. Instead, it was a pool, a shallow bowl of something that might have been molten metal once, now cooled almost entirely. Only in one small place near the center was there a glow, a faint, sullen ember, the color of old coals. It pulsed, slowly, weakly. "The shard," Maerold said softly. Elen walked forward, drawn. The light from the ember barely touched her boots. It was a tired light, curling in on itself. "It's so small," she whispered. "So are most crucial things," Maerold said. She knelt at the edge of the basin. The metal was cold under her hands, seamed with cracks. The ember flickered, as if her presence troubled it. "What do we do?" she asked. "We do nothing," Maerold said. "We listen, you most of all." The air in the cavern felt thick, as if full of unsaid words. Elen closed her eyes, resting her hands on the cold rim, and let the silence settle. At first, all she could hear was her own heart, the rise and fall of her breath. Then, other things. The slow drip of water somewhere far off. The subtle groan of rock settling. The almost imperceptible sound of Maerold's weight shifting as he leaned on his staff. Beneath that, like a sound remembered rather than heard, she sensed something else. A humming, so faint she might have mistaken it for a memory of bees in summer. It came from the ember, or from the space around it, or from somewhere she did not have a name for. It felt lonely. Her throat tightened. Without opening her eyes, she spoke. "I see you," she whispered. "I used to watch you from my valley. You were the last light before the mountains. You told us when the seasons turned. We didn't know that you were tired." The ember pulsed, a fraction brighter. "I'm sorry," she went on. "We thought you would always be there. We forgot that someone had to tend you, that everything burning needs something in return." Warmth brushed the backs of her hands, faint, like a sleeping creature shifting closer to a body in the dark. "I'm not a dwarf," she said, "or an elf, or a wizard. I'm just someone who remembers. But I brought your name. I brought the ache of missing you. I brought the fear of what happens if you go." The humming changed. It was still soft, but now it had a shape, like a note rising at the end of a phrase, asking. "What do you need?" she asked. The answer was not in words. It was in sensation, in images, in feelings. She saw, in her mind's eye, dwarves clustered around the basin, faces lit from below, eyes bright with effort and pride. She felt the rumble of their voices as they sang, not in celebration, but in work, steady, repetitive, honing. She saw elves standing on the mountain's shoulder, looking up at the sky, humming a line that caught the note and carried it outward. Humans at their hearths, telling stories about the star, weaving its presence into their understanding of the year. Hargul in their caves, grumbling about the cursed light that woke their bats too early, but secretly comforting their young with tales of its constancy. Wizards, old and young, sitting by river stones, feeling the steady pulse of it in the bones of the world. She felt, too, the absence, the gaps where a voice had fallen silent. A day missed, then two, then many. The ember had tried to keep its note, but it was meant to be a chorus, not a solo. It was weary, hungry, not for fuel, but for attention, for the knowing that made its burning meaningful. Tears slipped from under Elen's closed lids. "I hear you," she whispered. "I can't be all of that. But I can bring them back, I can remind them, I can ask them to sing again." The ember flared, once, sending a ripple of warmth outward that touched her face like a hand. Maerold's voice came from above her, hushed. "It accepts," he said. "What do I do?" she asked, opening her eyes. The ember, though still small, was brighter now. There were hints of other colors in it, blue, white, gold, like threads of different metals in a molten pool. "You have already done it," Maerold said. "You have listened. You have promised. Now you must go back across the world and tug at its fraying edges." "That sounds like more walking," she said weakly. "It is," he said. She laughed, even as her chest ached. "Who will sing to it in the meantime?" "There are some who have never quite stopped," he said. "The elves. A few dwarves in their sleep. A hermit on the northern cliffs who likes to shout at the wind. And me, when my lungs cooperate." He touched her shoulder. "And you. It knows you now. When you look up, even far away, it will feel it." "Is that enough?" she asked. "For now," he said. "Enough for us to reach the next now." They did not stay long in the cavern after that. The air, now that she had tasted what lay beneath it, felt heavier, more laden. As they turned to go, Elen glanced back. The ember pulsed, a slow, steady beat. It was not the roaring flame one might have wished for, but it was no longer dying. Outside, the mountain's wind felt almost mild by comparison. "The dwarves will not like what we have done," Maerold said as they descended. "They do not enjoy being reminded of promises left unattended." "Will they punish us?" Elen asked. "They may try to scowl us into dust," he said, "but they will also be relieved. Pride is a brittle shell around a softer core." "Like eggs?" she suggested. "Like eggs," he agreed. The road back, as Maerold had said back in the valley, was not safe just because they had achieved something. The world had shifted. News of a kind traveled along lines that had nothing to do with messengers. As they crossed the lower passes, they began to see signs. A stone toppled here that had stood for generations, a bridge half broken by careless hands, a village burned and abandoned, smoke long gone but charred beams still standing like broken teeth. "Someone else is moving," Elen said quietly. "Yes," Maerold said, "not toward the forge, away from something else, or toward it, motives tangle." "Orcs?" she asked. "Humans?" "Both," he said, "and others. When fear rises, everyone sharpens their blades." "Will the forge's light help?" she asked. "In time," he said. "Light is slow, fear is very fast." They skirted the worst of the troubled places. Elen found herself thinking of Hagra and her people in the Greywood, of the elves on the pass, of the villagers in Loreth who had no idea that the sky had changed. "We have to tell them," she said one evening as they camped in a hollow out of the wind. All of them, not just the ones with long memories, the hargul, the dwarves, the people in my valley. They need to know that the star is listening, that it needs them. You are thinking like a librarian, Maerold said. You want to ensure everyone has access to the same story. Yes, she said stubbornly. Good, he replied. That is why you left home. It is also why going back will be harder than leaving. What do you mean? She asked. He fed another small branch to the fire, watching the flame take. You will not fit as you did, he said. You left as someone who believed the world ended at your hills. You will return with mountain air in your lungs and dwarven regret on your skin. People will expect you to be who you were. You will not be. They will not realize at first that they have changed too. The star's dimming touches even those who do not know its name. That sounds lonely, she said. It can be, he replied, or it can be a beginning. You will have to choose. They passed again through the grey wood, though not by the same paths. The forest shifted around them, as if testing their new shapes. The cave-wights watched from a distance and did not approach. Elen named them in her mind. Sorrow, confusion, leftover terror. They thinned into the trees. At the place where they had parted, Hagra was waiting, leaning on her axe. Her braids were adorned with a new charm, a small piece of metal that glowed faintly with its own inner light. You lived, she said. So far, Elen replied. Good, Hagra said. We almost had a bet. I won. Who bet against me? Elen asked. Hagra's grin was toothy. Me, she said. I enjoy being wrong. They spoke briefly of the forge, of the ember. Hagra listened, head tilted, eyes narrowed. We have caves, she said. We can sing if needed. We do not like stars much, but we like a sky that stays where it is. Then you're part of it now, Elen said, whether you like stars or not. Hagra snorted. Tell the sky this, she said. We will keep our part if everyone else keeps theirs. If someone breaks the song again, we will bite them. I'll pass it on, Elen said solemnly. When they left the grey wood, the air of the open country felt thinner, but also clearer. The hills rolled out before them, leading, eventually, back toward the valley. Ellen's heart pulled in two directions. One string tugged toward home. Her uncle, the Hall of Records, the familiar curve of the river. Another tugged outward, toward the mountain, the forge, the people she had met whose lives she had stepped into and out of, like rooms. You can stay, Maerold said quietly one afternoon as they walked, if you wish, with the dwarves, or the elves, or in the cities. There are libraries larger than your valley, fields of archives. What about Loreth? She asked. It will go on, he said. The fields' wilds will be planted. Children will grow. Someone will eventually notice that the star has brightened, and make up a story about why, and give it to their grandchildren. That's not what I meant, she said. I know, he replied. She thought of Hagra's rough humor, of the elf's precise words, of the dwarven regret inscribed in stone, of the forge's lonely hum, of the way the star's absence had felt like a missing tooth every night she'd watched the sky. I want to go home, she said, and I want to go everywhere, and I want to stay here on this road walking, with no one expecting anything of me except that I keep going. That's a lot of wanting for one chest, Maerold said. It's a very stubborn chest, she answered. Then perhaps, he said, you make your home not a place but a pattern. You go, you return. You bring what you find back to those who cannot go. And when you leave again, you take their questions with you. She pictured herself slipping in and out of the valley, carrying news, stories, names, a kind of circulation, like the river. That sounds tiring, she said. "It will be," he said. "It will also be alive." When they crested the last hill, and Loreth lay below them, snug between its familiar folds, Elen's throat tightened. The fields were as she remembered. The houses smoked in the same steady way. Children chased chickens in the lane near the well. Her uncle's roof still sagged in the middle. And yet, the sky above the western hills held a new light. The star was back, not as she had known it, steady, small, but brighter, a fraction larger, its pulse clearer. It shone as if in greeting, or in recognition. "It's different," she whispered. "So are you," Maerold said. They walked down into the valley together. People stared. A few waved. One of the elders hurried to meet them, her apron still dusted with flour. "Elen!" she exclaimed. "You're back! It's been—" "I know," Elen said gently. "We'll count it up later." Her uncle appeared at the doorway of the house, squinting. "You left a note," he said, as if continuing a conversation. "About a star." "Yes," she said. "It came back 2 nights ago," he said. "I saw it. It made the cow uneasy." "I'll apologize to the cow," she said. "You're different," he added, not unkindly. "So is the sky," she replied. He grunted. "Stew's on. You can tell me about it if you like. Or sit and say nothing. Both are permitted." Her eyes stung. "Thank you," she said. Maerold stood a little apart, staff in hand, watching the exchange. "You're not staying," she said to him when they had a moment alone. "Not now," he said. "There are other roads, other foolish souls to recruit. But I will return. I like your valley. It has good bread." "And stubborn chests," she said. "Especially those," he agreed. He reached into his cloak and brought out a small object, a stone, no larger than a plum pit, shot through with a faint, silvery glimmer. "A shard?" she asked, startled. "A memory," he said, "taken from the edge of the forge. It will not burn your roof down. It will not light your lamps. But if you hold it, when you look at the star, it may help you hear the note beneath it more clearly." She took it, feeling its cool weight in her palm. "Thank you," she said. "For listening," he replied. That night, after the stew, after her uncle had gone to bed with a muttered comment about people who talked to wizards and came back with less sense than they left with, Elen climbed the hill above the village. The sky arched high and clear. The stars were sharp. The missing piece in the west was no longer missing. The star shone, steady and bright, its pulse a soft, insistent beat. She held the little shard between her fingers, feeling its surface warm slowly. In her mind, faint but unmistakable, she heard humming. Not just the note of the forge. Other lines, threading through it, the deep, rough song of dwarves, the wild, broken harmonies of hargul, the clear, cool tones of elves, the wavering human melodies of villages and cities and lone shepherds on hills. "It's working," she murmured. The star flared, as if winking. She sat back on the grass, the hills solid under her, the night wide around. The world was still full of trouble. Wars would still come. People would forget, and remember and forget again. The forge would need tending. The paths between peoples would fray and be rewoven. But the ember was no longer alone. The note had become, once more, a chord. She was a librarian from a small valley with a stubborn chest and a stone in her hand that hummed when she listened. She would keep the records. She would tell the stories. She would go when she could, and come back when she must. She would remind those who had forgotten that the sky was not a ceiling, but a conversation. Below, in the dark, the sheep shifted in their pen. The river murmured. A light went out in one house, then another. Above, The star kept watch, its pulse a steady, patient heartbeat in the great body of the world. Elen lay back and closed her eyes, the shard warm against her palm, and for the first time since Maerold had found her on the hill, she felt the kind of sleep coming that did not flee at the first stray thought. A deep, ordinary sleep in an extraordinary world. Far away, under the mountain, the forge glowed a little brighter. In the grey wood, Hagra grumbled at the young hargul to sing more in tune. In the high passes, the elves looked west and adjusted their own songs by a hair's breadth. On a distant river bank, Maerold sat and listened to the water, humming under his breath, feeling the lines between places tugging, strengthening. The world breathed in, breathed out. And in a valley almost no map remembered, a woman who had gone out to look after a missing star came home, carrying in her chest the quiet, persistent light of having chosen and changed and returned. She slept. The star did not.